Welcome to the special UNESCO World Philosophy Day version of Dr. Sadler's Philosophy Forum. We have a lot of cool stuff to discuss today. I've got my special guest, Leandro Lima, the founder, inventor, designer of an innovative new platform, TruthScore. We're going to talk a lot about that today. We're also going to talk about critical thinking and the culture that we live in, and I'll put in a plug for my own new critical thinking channel. I decided, since it is World Philosophy Day and critical thinking is such an important part of philosophy, these would fit in well together. If you, like with all these Google Hangouts on air, if you want to ask us questions, we have the question and answer app enabled on the Google Plus event page. So we already have one question. If you want to weigh in with more questions or comments, that's great. You can upvote each other's questions or comments, and we'll take the ones that have the most plus ones first. We're not going to be watching Twitter and YouTube and these other feeds because it's just me and Leandro doing it today. So if you want to engage us, the way to do it is through the Google Plus app. Like I said, it's World Philosophy Day, and so a word about that first. The United Nations declared World Philosophy Day about a decade ago, and it's commemorated each year. So this is the one day of the year where we get to, do some rah-rah for philosophy. I've already released a video about doing philosophy in a public way a little bit earlier. There's a lot of other cool events going on. Actually, a lot of them are over now because, the ones in Europe, it's nighttime. But there you go. That's World Philosophy Day. Let me introduce Leandro. I've mentioned that he is the founder of TruthScore. So once he starts talking, you're going to see his young, visage on here. So go ahead, Leandro, and say something.
Hello to everyone watching. My name's Leandro. I'm the founder of TruthScore. For those of you who don't know anything about it, it's basically a social and educational website that really attempts to organize the way we communicate with each other, and really the way we argue with each other, the way we disagree with each other. And so that's my goal, is that we have a breakthrough as a society, and that we could really unite instead of bicker about left, right, up, down, and different things we bicker about.
So that's a good segue into something, but a question occurs to me that I didn't put into this list. Why is it so important to change the tone of argument or debate in our current society, in your view? Because I know that's part of what TruthScore is about.
It is. I think a lot of the world's problems, right? We have the internet now. We have these breakthroughs in technology, but those breakthroughs I don't think have really made an amazing difference in how we organize our society. From U.S. politics to global politics, politics is where our lack of communication and our inability to unite as one group, or at least a stronger universal voice about our society, it's still really lacking, in my opinion. People are dying. There are wars going on all over the world, and it doesn't seem to be getting better. And I don't see really any tools that really help us there, significant tools.
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about, again, we'll get back to you getting to tell us more about TruthScore in a second.
Of course, no, I want to know I have a question about UNESCO too.
Okay. Well, I remember going to this e-democracy forum. This is about 6-7 years ago, and one of the big issues that they were talking about with the internet was the formation of silos, where people are only listening to those who see things the same way. You can see this on Facebook. You can see this on Twitter. It's kind of a point with dating sites where people will actually say, "I will only date a Democrat," or "I will only date a Republican. Don't give me anybody else." And so the kind of site that you've developed here that allows people to not just put out their ideas, but have to say why they think that they're justified, and then see each other's ideas and engage them. It's one way to try to break out of these silos that the internet, I don't want to say it puts us in it, but it facilitates that.
It does. It does. I've heard it be called like the echo chamber.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I've heard. My Google Plus feed is my personal echo chamber for all sorts of political views that are, I think, unique or unusual or uncommon, I should say. And it's my echo chamber. I accept that, and I like it. I do get some thrill of inclusion by going there and hearing and seeing all the things that I like and all the things I agree with. Facebook and all those places, right? You tend to they promote the things you like. It makes sense. You know, when we go to a store or a movie, we want to see what we like. So they are giving us what we want.
So
But
this is a tool to break out of that a bit.
yeah, there's a TED Talk as well that talks about that. Actually, maybe we can link it in the video later on. That explains this. It's like the bubble of likes, like the echo chamber.
Yeah.
And I think it's great to have that, but we really don't have a place where we can really talk more seriously. Not even about what we like. What is it that we like and don't like, and why?
That's the key thing, is the why. So why don't you ask me your question about UNESCO, and then we'll...
Yeah, it's more about philosophy. It's a real general question. It may not even be a fair question. You know, you being someone who's a professor, who's taught philosophy, who's seen people struggle with it and people take it on and change their lives. What to you personally, maybe, or to people you know, why is philosophy so important? You know, for those that see it as important, why would you say it's important? And those that don't see it as important, you know, can you persuade them a little bit in recognizing its importance?
Yeah, that is a fair question. I think that one part of answering it is to say that sometimes people are doing philosophy without it being recognized as doing such. So there's a lot of, because of the way our disciplines have fallen out, there's a lot of people doing philosophy in political science departments or English departments, history departments. There's like, if I want to study Alexis de Tocqueville, who's a philosopher, it's very hard to study him in a philosophy department. You go over to poli-sci or American studies or something like that. So there's a lot of philosophy that's going on without people recognizing it as that discipline. Partly also because the people who've been doing philosophy, a lot of them have professionalized it to such an extent that it's become boring and so abstract to many other people. You know, the video that I released today for World Philosophy Day, it was specifically about doing philosophy in public ways, practical ways, and popular ways, because there's this conception that if we're doing that, we're kind of dumbing it down. You know, we're not doing real philosophy. But Socrates, he didn't have a degree. He didn't go around and say, "Show me your degree before I talk to you." Let me have your transcripts.
Yeah.
To enroll in my class. He went up to people and he talked to them, and there was back and forth discussion. And he didn't always, produce his best arguments for people that he thought weren't, heavy hitters. That at least Plato shows us that. But he was willing to engage other people. And so for me, philosophy, at least the way it was classically done, has always had this very practical element to it.
Right.
A lot of great philosophers have had day jobs, where they would do something that was productive. Machiavelli was a public official. Aristotle was a physician at one point and a tutor. So these are people who model for us what philosophy could be like. Unfortunately, I think a lot of our professors aren't even remotely like that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure some professors don't even like philosophy, if that's even possible.
You mean some of the professors who teach philosophy don't like?
Yeah, they don't really. They don't have a passion that really makes a difference.
That is actually the case, and I won't do anything like naming names, but I'll say that I've met plenty of people who only like this little tiny bit. It's sort of like somebody, imagine a chef, right? A chef who says, "I only like cheese, and the only cheese that I like is cheddar, and so the only thing I'm ever going to cook with is cheddar cheese." You wouldn't hire somebody like that. You're like, get the hell out of here. You're not a chef. But that's the way it is for a lot of people in philosophy, I think. And I'm picking on philosophy there. It's that way in a lot of other fields too.
Yeah, it's a lot of other fields. Yeah, philosophy. Yeah, I mean, I only after researching and reading a lot about things that interest me, did I notice that I was interested in philosophy. I didn't know it was philosophy till almost years after I really started to get into it, and I just enjoy it. What am I going to do?
I had the same experience. I never intended to become a philosophy professor, and if you'd told me when I was in high school that that's what I would be doing, first I would say I don't plan on going to college. So I don't know how you figure I'm going to be a professor, but the idea of doing something like this would have just I took one philosophy course in high school, and it was terrible, and that should have turned me off forever. But it was like what you're talking about. You know, you're questioning, you're reasoning, you're saying why about things, and you don't realize that that's integral to the discipline of philosophy.
It's a thinker's game for sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
So tell us about TruthScore. You know, what's the sort of thumbnail overview of it, and then we'll talk about some of the details a bit later.
Yeah. So the thumbnail overview. One of the ways to look at it is, you know, first of all, we've all had water-cooled discussions. We've all had conversations with our family or friends about about a political topic. That's one of the most common, but it could be about anything. And I think one of the common experiences that I've had that I wanted to kind of cure when I was brainstorming TruthScore is there's that rare situation where you either read a book or saw, you know, a lengthy documentary. You saw something that really persuaded you, and you really have strong beliefs about a certain part of the thing you're talking about, right? This apple you're talking about, for example. And then you're having a conversation with someone, and you can't really get at them because it's a very emotional conversation. There's just a lot going on in the conversation, and you can never really pin them down to try to get them to see something new in the conversation. It's not even about forcing anybody. It's just about it's enlightenment, right? It's about seeing something new you haven't seen before. And I had that trouble for years with friends and family. I do like to argue. You know, and argue is not even the right word. It's really discuss. It's converse. But most people also recognize it as argument, which is like a breakdown of communication, I'd say, in the everyday sense. So long story short, TruthScore tries to kind of solve that. You know, it allows people to have like a simulation of a discussion about opposing views, and it tries to harness the different points that would actually persuade someone this way or that way, because every time has points. They're usually the talking points when it comes to politics. It's the points that keep people firmly on one way or the other way, and those are the points that can have someone budge. And that's what TruthScore offers. It offers the people who know and who have the evidence and the argumentation and the logic reasoning being the key word, behind something. They really have an opportunity to put it all together and connect the dots in a way that anyone can navigate. And I'm going to give one more example, although I think I might be beating the horse dead. Feel free to tell me that. You know, if you just pick up a book, you know, a book is just a string of sentences, right? It's a construct, which is a programming term. It's a construction. TruthScore is the same thing, except that it just organizes how the construction's made for easy navigation and with the purpose to actually prove a certain thing true.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Talk a little bit about what users encounter when they get into TruthScore.
Well, ultimately, TruthScore, the topmost element in TruthScore is what we call a topic. And so we're used to Facebook posts and Google posts and tweets, right? We're used to these little tiny, and I say tiny because they're usually small. They're short bursts of information. Memes, right? Memes being those pictures with words on top of them with a certain message. Those short messages that are contagious nearly.
Yeah.
Those are the topics basically, right? Which are the subject matter, what we're talking about. It could be, you know, to use something political, that Obama broke a certain promise, or that Bush broke a certain campaign promise, for example. You know, they break a promise or two, or more than that. We can prove that. We can prove that. I think beyond a reasonable doubt in some cases, and in some cases we can just make a really great case for it. And so those are the topics. Those are the main elements. And so when users come on, they see the topic at the top, and then there's the two sides. And now what's important to say this is I think somebody already at the VIS 89, how is it different than a forum? Well, a forum is really the simulation of a conversation. And a conversation is you speak, I speak, you speak, I speak, you speak, I speak, you speak, I speak.
Yeah, it's sequential. This has a different structure to it.
We got a little better with like Reddit, where you can actually reply underneath, right? So you can pretty much segment off a new conversation. That's a new dimension, if you will. It's a really wonderful idea to do that. And it can get a little hairy, but it's also very useful. But it's still the same basic premise of you talk, I talk, you talk, I talk, you talk, I talk, you talk, I talk. With some votes maybe, so you can see the things that are more popular. TruthScore is different in that the things that fall below the topic, or the replies, if you will, like a forum, they're actually intended to be what's called the test of reality, which is an aspect of the topic that you believe is real, that you believe has substance, you know? So
it's relevant. That contributes to saying yes,
actually,
one way or the other.
Exactly. I mean, the test of reality should be something where if you were to remove that from reality, like it's gone, if it wasn't real at all, the topic couldn't be real. So it's like, like the building of a building blocks of a building, the steel of a building. You take the steel out, the building is down. It's a different form. It's no longer what it used to
Yeah,
be.
it's sort of like saying, so the topic is an assertion, something is the case, and then you go a little bit lower than that, and you've got the tests of reality. And there could be anywhere from 1 to 20 to 100 of these over time. And some of them are for saying, here's why you ought to accept this claim. And some of them are against, saying, here's something else, and this goes against that claim. And then what's really cool about it is, you've got other stuff below that. So it's not just
Correct.
here you
Correct.
go.
Correct. Great, thank you for that. That's a good segue. So if you and me are having a conversation about something controversial, I might ask you a question like, well, do you believe so? And I don't want to use any examples because it gets political and people get turned off.
Yeah.
Do you believe? Do you think that could have happened? Let's just use a fake example, which is that Jim killed Khan, like a murder case.
Yeah.
So feel free to suggest one too. So in a case like Jim killed Khan, Khan has to be dead. Is Khan dead? That's a pretty serious test of reality. If I can walk down the room, open a door, and pull Khan out of a room, and he's talking to you, is that going to persuade you that Jim didn't kill Khan? You probably say yeah. So that doesn't prove anything. That's just a test of reality. It's just a segment that would persuade you. So although there may be hundreds of tests of realities for a topic, really there would only probably be a dozen to a half dozen that most people would be willing to be persuaded by.
So that's a good point to talk a little bit about the function of the score. What's the score in TruthScore, the voting that takes place?
Yeah, the voting plays a big part, and one of the biggest things that TruthScore does is it does break a conversation down, a discussion that you would have with someone or a group of people. It breaks it down into many different segments, so you can focus on what each segment's intentions are. So with the voting, so let's say that we have this test of reality that is Khan dead, right? If he's dead, clearly there's a higher chance that Jim killed him, which don't know yet, right? So by people voting that this would certainly prove it wrong, right, and it would help prove it right, people make that judgment call, which is like it's a judgment. It's not really even a score, but it's a judgment. For those that vote that this would actually prove it's certainly wrong, it's like without a doubt, that pretty much sets this. That gives it that test of reality a high score for the negative.
So here's a good question that came up a long time ago when we were having discussions about this, but I think it's one that a lot of people, when they encounter the platform for the first time, are going to ask. Yeah. Are you actually measuring the truth of things? Is that what the score is intended to?
No, we're not measuring the truth, because truth is also very personal. You can't really truly measure truth. Truth is something kind of we make up in our own mind, right?
Sometimes.
You can just look at religion.
With the Jim killed Khan, you can pull Khan out and say, hey, look at that,
Yeah, people may not want to believe it, even if Khan was right there. We've seen weirder things happen in our society, I think. But I lost my train of thought. Scoring the truth. No, what people are really scoring is they're scoring how well a test of reality bears on the topic. We're judging if we accept a piece of evidence, for example, if we think a logical construction is sound, which means which is a debate term, which means that it's built correctly, that it does make sense. So what we're basically doing is giving the community an opportunity to communicate to the people who are contributing. So you and me and other people, the thinkers of the world, are going to contribute to the website, and the contributors and the community at large will judge, the weight that tests of realities have, and then.
This is actually a good point to take one of the questions.
Yeah.
And Atavist89 actually rolled a whole bunch of questions into one block, and I'm only going to take one part of this, but it's something I was going to sort of steer you towards talking about anyway. Mm-hmm. You've got this platform, and you're allowing people to vote on controversial topics and to vote on what counts as good evidence or what's relevant. How are you going to keep people from just saying, hey, come over here and vote for me. He's asking about spammers and trolls, and that's a
Yeah.
slightly different question. But trolls, this is one of the problems with Reddit is you get some communities where people just downvote stuff because they're a bunch of jerks, or they don't like a particular topic. It's one reason why I looked at Reddit and I was like, I'm not going to get involved with that. Too much work to try to make my case there. So how are you going to keep that from happening? I mean, I've got a few ideas. We've talked about.
I have a background in website development and programming, and so the fight to keep spammers and trolls out, or at least subdued, is like the never-ending fight, right? It'll happen forever. It's basically why we have police in society, to keep out the burglars and the people who will make us unsafe. The spammers and trollers are basically the thieves and the crooks of the internet. They ruin our experience. So that's always a battle. But still want to answer your question. So there's a few techniques that already are well established that lets the community block and flag those users. That's just one way. But I think that more broadly speaking, right, besides using those common techniques, you also may have like an amazing, great number of people who have one view. I think that's the question. So they become the trolls. So let's just see, let's just use a fanatical religious right group, right?
Sure.
A fringe group, right? So they may have,
Let's say you're discussing something having to do with homosexuality.
Oh, right, of course.
No, it's a very small church that I forget the name of it.
I have it in my mind. Baptist.
Let's say they were 20 times as big, and they were really into the internet, and they say, "Well, TruthScore, we're going to make sure that any topic that comes up along these lines, we upvote everything that's on our side, and we downvote everything that's on the other side."
Yeah, that can still happen. I'm sure that's going to happen. This is not a feature on TruthScore yet because it's in prototype mode. But what we've been developing to kind of resolve that. It's not really a resolve that. The reality is, when someone disagrees about certain fundamental ideas, whether they agree or disagree, whatever judgment they make, the judgment becomes public, meaning all the other users can see what judgment they made. And so that judgment gets recorded. So it's almost like me saying, I don't know, Christmas trees aren't prickly. For whatever reason, I think that it's important for me to say that to win my argument or have my side be seen. And I can go on the record saying that. There's no trouble, and people will agree. Some people will agree with me. But it's just the more we do that, the more we distance ourselves from reality, I think, and it's recorded that way, I think the further we get from the people who are interested in the real.
So here we're actually answering, and this is why I'm putting that question up there. Atavis 89's question is TruthScore anonymous. So the answer to that is in a sense it is, because unless you actually belong to the community, if you're not on the platform, you can't see what people are saying. But once somebody's entering, Christmas trees are prickly, and that's why I don't like Christmas, it's out there. Well, if users want to revise what they've said, though, can they take it back?
You can definitely revise, and you get a lot of points for that. Not physical points, but you get a lot of credit for that, because enlightenment, changing mind is the path to enlightenment. Although you could be changing it to something that works less for you. So that's our goal too, to change the context for what it is to be wrong and change it towards an enlightenment conversation.
I think one of the issues too, and this is something that we did talk about, as far as like keeping a sort of a preponderance of too many people of this view or that view coming in and messing up the numbers, is we're inviting. Can we call it a beta test? The sort of the pool.
Not beta yet. I'm calling it prototype because it still has a little bit to go.
Okay.
To be opened up so it's not.
So the prototype is by invitation only at this point.
That's right.
And I've suggested a number of people in the critical thinking community, some of whom may be kind of far out on this side or that side on some issues, but presumably there should be sort of like a good enough critical mass of people who are they're gonna vote where some measure of common sense would go, so that once it opens up for the whole general public, there's already a little bit of a balance in place. It's sort of like putting ballast into a canoe, to keep it from tipping.
Well, I think we're biased on that balance, right? We're automatically biased in that. I think if you start making some choices about some fundamental judgments on TruthScore about the world and how it is, you may have to make a similar judgment in another place for another topic.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is up on the conversation of what's real and what's not real. People who really are out to just prove their point and ignore reason and all those different items and logic, they're going to eventually contradict themselves. Not necessarily all the time, but there's going to be moments where they actually contradict themselves in the same judgment they're making. And TruthScore is going to catch that. And so if you're saying Christmas trees are prickly, on December, and then months later you have a conversation and you think they're not prickly. Hold on a minute. They can't be both prickly and not prickly.
Yeah.
You have to actually make a choice, and so you have to pick which of these arguments you're going to. So arguments are going to change. Things are going to what's considered truth on TruthScore. The score is going to change based on how much you progress. And users who only contribute a little bit, just to be right about a certain idea, and they don't contribute much more, the weight of their rationality, which we also measure, the weight of their contribution is diminished. So the weight that they themselves pull on that topic is diminished.
Yeah, that's a good way to address that too. One of the things,
if you don't mind, just finish off that question. There's two questions in one there. Anonymous. It says anonymous. It's really not anonymous because TruthScore will have your email address, and that's as anonymous as you want to be, right? You can have an email address that we have no care in the world about. So it's as anonymous as a YouTube or a Twitter, where you do have to register with an email address so that we can contact you, but you can have a username that doesn't tie to your personality at all. So you can be anonymous in that sense. But it's good to log in. Yes.
Yeah, that makes good sense. Is there going to be any way to keep people from having a whole bunch of multiple accounts?
There's no true way to do that. I think there's no real way to prevent that. I think if you're going to have multiple accounts, you still have to log into each account and make judgments on things. And so you're actually, if you're going to spend, let's say you're going to spend 2 hours on TruthScore a week. If you really want to get something done like that and you want to troll around, you're going to have to do more of that. And so, yeah, it's possible. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, it's like with security. You can't keep everyone out, but if you make it
best attempt
onerous to rob the store, you're probably not going to get robbed.
Yeah.
So let's indulge ourselves a little bit in talking about the sort of backstory for the project and how we got to collaborating. One of the things that I never did ask you was when you first got the idea for it. What was the timeline for this?
Let me try to remember. It was quite a few years ago, funny enough. It must have been, give me a minute, it's 14 now. It must have been 2004 or 5. It's like 9 or 10 years ago. Maybe even a little longer than that. The backstory is that I did a paper in speech class for college. So actually, it must have been 2002. But either way, I did a paper on the collapse of the World Trade Center. And, I did a lot of research, and I watched some PBS videos. And, the official story was great, and it was fantastic. I explained how the collapse happened based on the official story. A few years later, when I was reading online and enlightening myself, I discovered quite a different story about the World Trade Center, right? And when I did the research, and I learned a little bit of physics to understand what the research was saying, I really gave it a shot. And I think I'm a little cognitive dissonance, for those that know what that is, right? When you get frustrated or angry, when you have contradicting ideas in your mind. I don't suffer from that as much as most other people, which is a weird competitive thing to say. But I was able to break free of that, and I really started to, some people call it a conspiracy theory. It's all crazy. I don't want to get into that right now. But when I started to realize that something as something related to physics, something related to math and science, could go so poorly understood by so many people in the world on a topic of such serious nature, right? Which is those people died, a lot going on there. That's when that's when I had to do something. You know, that's when I started to look. I was also picking up debate and argumentation, and I was always interested in that. And I'm like, you know what? I can't believe this. I can't believe that I can't talk to people about it. I can't believe that I can't enlighten people. And I wanted to break through to that. And I've been working for about 10 years in both conceptually and now, of course, programming it to make that happen, to give people an opportunity to communicate.
Yeah, you know, there's something about having to actually put your reasoning, to map it out, to put it out there, that tends to neutralize the emotions, you know, that allows people to have a certain distance and say, oh, well, maybe I am a biased party when it comes to this sort of thing, and then to be able to engage other people. And I think, you know, another good thing about this, certainly I, as somebody who teaches critical thinking, I could see using this in a class for my students, so that not only do they have to do the practice of mapping out arguments instead of just making claims, right. They get to see what other people, what their reasoning processes are, and they can say, oh, you know, I never thought about that. Because most of us, you know, we have, there might be 20 ways to get to point A, and we find the one that works for us, and that's all we think about. But then you see some other ones, and you're like, oh, that's, now I actually understand point A a hell of a lot better.
Correct. There's that herd mentality that exists for us, right?
Yeah.
I think when people, so let's go a little bit deeper, right? So you have a test of reality. You can't imagine it being true. You can't even fathom it. It's preposterous to consider something like that, right? So although you would be persuaded, you don't believe it. So you go into the test of reality and you kind of expand it. And in the test of reality itself, so now we're not looking at the topic anymore, but we're looking at the test of reality. That's where people can contribute as much evidence, reasoning, logic, connections that they want to try to make that one little part of that point to try to support the topic.
Yeah.
So that's where the good stuff is. That's where we get people focused. Imagine a forum or a you know, Facebook post, just the communication where everyone's trying to really go and prove one very specific idea in many different ways.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a focus.
And there's a whole universe of them with TruthScore. If you're not particularly that into this topic, you can go over to this topic.
Correct.
Let me ask you another sort of backstory question.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a pretty ambitious project. Mm-hmm. What gave you the confidence that something like a whole new platform to do this kind of thing could be developed?
I'll tell you. So it really came from, it's two things. So I'm a programmer. I've been programming since I was a teenager in high school. And so, you know, I think when you're programming, you have to build logical constructs in your mind. I became, with any practice, right? You become
so you can visualize.
I really mastered programming and the structure. I basically tell computers what to do for a living. And so when I started reading these books on argumentation and debate, when I started to understand the concept, I mean, when I'm talking about debate, I want to really distinguish here. We are not talking about the kind of debates we see at presidential elections.
Yeah.
That is just talking back and forth again. There's no substance, not no substance. There's little substance when compared to official, like Lincoln-Douglas debates. So when I started to understand debates, I started to, in my mind, from a programming perspective, which is databases and websites, right, that a great portion, pretty much all of the debate process could be broken down into clear transactions that could both be meaningful, measured, aggregated, and organized in such a way that it actually not only gives meaning to a debate, but it allows hundreds, if not thousands of people to all contribute to the same thing.
Yeah, I can understand that. You know, one of the things that we would do in critical thinking classes is have students take complex arguments and then diagram them. And so many things would fall in place for them that they just couldn't get. I think a lot of it depends on what kind of a person you are. I know that I like putting stuff up on the chalkboard because then I can see how it's actually...
Yeah, visual learners versus others.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think it has that potential. It has the potential to do that. You know, when people and people are going to see this has 80% support. This can't be. I don't believe it. No, I refuse to believe this. I've been taught otherwise my whole life. You open it up and you read through it and you find that one thing that someone wrote because they grew up in your part of the neighborhood or grew up in your culture, and they said the one thing that's going to make a difference. And then you're like, there's that moment. I don't think most of us are even used to having a moment where we realize something new, a moment of enlightenment.
Yeah.
It's so commonly associated with anger because we're having it vocally, and we want to be right, and we're in the moment, and we're in the heat of it, that I don't think we're even used to as a culture to almost enjoying it and having a thrill of like, oh my God, it's real, it's true, and the implications of something being true,
Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's how we grow.
Here's one last sort of reminiscing kind of question. Then we'll get into some other stuff and start taking some more questions from viewers. By the way, if you want to ask us questions or leave comments, use the Q&A app in Google+. You can ask us anything that you want about this platform, about critical thinking, about culture, about philosophy, about channels or things like that, and we'll field them. But here's the question. I don't know if you'll be able to answer this with any sort of precision. How much time would you estimate that you've devoted in this project to conceptualizing and then developing and TruthScore?
Well, let's think about it. I think it was very on and off for the first 5 years. On and off means I spend a couple of hours a week. I'm not doing the math here, but it was very on and off for a couple of years. It's really in the last 4 years that I have notebooks of notes that I've created, being on planes and just reading and researching. Gosh, I guess it's just like a part-time job, the equivalent of a part-time job, evenings, and I don't know if you're looking for like hours a week or.
No.
Yeah, but it's been on my mind.
Just to give some sort of perspective to the viewers about what goes into something like that.
Yeah, it takes a lot of energy. One of the things I've learned is people in general, it doesn't matter whether family, friends, or people you don't know very well, there's a lot of discouragement out there. And I think I've heard that from people who have become singers and dancers and people who have become successful. There really is a lot of discouragement. It's incredible how discouraging everyone is. Not in a bad way, but to be able to get past that is, I think, is necessary.
Yeah, what I started thinking about is you probably have put as much time into TruthScore as I put into my first book, which is a set of translations and then an introduction and bibliography, and it took me about 6 years.
Right.
But it was it wasn't all just focused on that. I was teaching and I was doing other things and even writing other projects. And then there were some periods where that's all I would be focused on for, say, a month or so.
Right.
Now with a book, if you're a philosopher and you have an academic position and you tell your colleagues, I think I'm going to do a book. They say, yeah, that's a good idea because you want to get tenure eventually, don't you? So there's kind of some encouragement there. Doing the kind of book that I planned on doing, there actually was a lot of discouragement. Like, you're gonna do what? You're gonna translate this stuff, and nobody else is working with this, and because I was trying to do something to promote scholarship on the set of debates, actually, a set of debates about philosophy and Christianity in France. But at least with that, there's a kind of recognized process. Oh, you're gonna write a book? All right. Well, then you should do this and this and this. With designing something like this, who did you run into who was supportive? Who said, yeah, I think this is a great idea. Run with it. Were there models for you that you had for other people who'd been successful doing this?
No, I have my programmer peer friends. Right, so I have my close knit couple of friends who are programmers, and they were supportive. They were supportive. They were actually the most supportive. They didn't quite understand it exactly like I did. I guess they didn't believe in it maybe as much, but they were supportive. My family was supportive. My brother, who's probably watching, I think for, I don't know, for the last 9 years, he just, no, maybe not, maybe 5 years, just didn't believe it, didn't even believe that. He just thought I was using it as an excuse to be obsessed with something. And I can be obsessive, and he's right. I have used it as an excuse to be obsessive about things. But until he saw the website, on my screen, and he actually saw it working, and he thought to himself, oh, he started asking me questions about Reddit. He started to really realize that there's potential here. There's potential here.
Yeah. I think there's something to that, having something tangible that you can point to. I was actually reminded, and this is totally off topic, but it's kind of funny. I'm a big fan of Dilbert, and almost everybody who's worked in an office probably is. And there's one where the dog, who's always trying to get out of work, is being asked by somebody, how come you didn't get this work done? He said, well, I've got all these other projects. And they said, well, you don't get any of these other projects done. Yeah, because my projects are good for an excuse for why I can't get to your project.
Yes, totally. Yeah, no, for sure, without a doubt. There's no doubt about that.
I think there are some people who do that sort of thing.
There are. I can, if you don't mind, because I can knock some of these out. Atavista
Answer some more questions.
I'm sorry.
Let's actually finish up with the forum question, because there's something I want to say about that. This is one that Altavist89 had up before we started. Is TruthScore like a forum? How's it different than numerous forums I can sign on to? You've answered quite a bit of that.
Yep.
I think that one way, I think that the thinking about a forum as being a sort of sequential conversation, what we would call diachronic in linguistic terms, is a good way to think about it. It flows through time, right? It's a record of it just only goes one way. With this, it's more like a whole network that spreads out, so that well, from one topic, you can have all these different perspectives being represented, and then those can sink even further into the nuts and bolts of why people believe this. And so it's less tied to time in a certain sense.
For sure. And I can answer it one further way. There's no limit to how deep TruthScore goes, which makes me think of the Matrix. So, sometimes, and we've heard this, we've heard lectures before where the professor or someone's explaining something, and they make a case. They talk for, let's say 30 minutes. They first explain a fundamental concept A, then they explain fundamental concept B, then they explain C and D, and at the end, they tie it all together into this tapestry of persuasion for those that are persuaded. And so TruthScore is a platform for that exact conversation. You can create an argument that proves a new idea that connects with another argument that proves a new idea, and you can kind of go deeper and deeper and deeper, or I should say shallower and shallower and shallower. And so you're making your case to support a test of reality, and people have already voted on that if they think it's a good test of reality or not, whether they're going to be persuaded by that.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it different.
Why don't you tell me what question you'd like to take next, and then I'll put it up on the board since I control it.
Yeah, it's going to be the 9/11 one.
Okay.
I'm not going to talk extensively about it. You can go to Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. It's thousands of architects and engineers who have, American citizens, who are the professionals in the matter. They're the ones that do the physics, and I don't have to say much about them. They're the professionals that go to court, and courts take their testimony as their testimony. They've bound together, and they've created a compelling case that challenges the status, the narrative, the official story. And so, if you want to know what I think, really, all you have to do is go to 9/11 AE911truth.com, I believe. You can Google that, and whatever you find there, I think they're doing a great job of shining light on something that's kind of been closed by I think our government's closed their eyes to what other new information can be discovered there. So that's what I believe, and I think it's important from a critical thinking perspective too to point out two things. One is that one can reject the official 9/11 report, the book that you can buy, in part, in whole, on this reason, on that reason. Not all rejections of it are the same thing. A lot of moving parts, yeah.
Yeah, and then you can also say, well, I think, here's a plausible reconstruction that's very different than saying I know exactly what happened. The other thing is, it's an interesting thing to ask Leandro about, but it almost has nothing to do with TruthScore as such, other than, being something that got him thinking about it in the first place. Because, regardless of what position a person has on particular controversial topics, that's not going to play an awful lot into the structure of something like TruthScore. So,
Oh, yeah, my political views and my religious views, they don't get in the way of my work when I program for my clients, and they're not going to get it's not my goal to get in the way of TruthScore. TruthScore is a platform for everyone to communicate in, and I originally thought of making a case about 9/11 and about other things that are important. And I realized, I've been in. It's good it took 10 years because I've grown a lot. Right, I'm 33 now. I've matured quite a bit, and I realized that when you make something open and you give people a voice, if you build it, they will come.
yeah.
I don't know if 9/11. I mean, I have my own personal beliefs, but I don't know what the world will ultimately decide on 9/11 or any kind of topic like that. But now, soon at least, there'll be a platform for people to find out.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. It reminds me a bit. I go to this International Society for McIntyrean Inquiry, which is a big mouthful. And what it means is it's a society of people who like Alistair McIntyre's work. Some of
Oh,
them are, hardcore Marxists. Some of them are
the Jungs of the world, right?
What's that?
You're familiar with Jung? Uh,
With Jung?
Carl, is it Carl Jung?
Yeah, Carl Jung, yeah.
Yeah, there's a huge following, and I understand it.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. McIntyre, he's still alive right now. He's very, he's in his 80s, but he's in good health.
Yeah.
He doesn't go to the meetings. You know why?
He does or he doesn't?
He doesn't.
Does not. Got it.
He went to one. He went to the one that was celebrating his 80th birthday. And that was, because they were celebrating his birthday, so obviously he has to be there. He doesn't go because his view is that if he goes, people are going to be looking to him for what's the answer. And he's all about open inquiry and debate and engaging opponents and stuff like that. So it's sort of like that with you and TruthScore. Your vote should count for one vote just like everybody else's, which it does. I do want to specify that, lest anyone think that it doesn't, because you created something because you have confidence in the process of inquiry and debate.
I do, and reasoning. I think we're all literate, or most of us are literate. I mean, we're all literate, and let's just say we're all literate, right? It's just such a great percentage here in the U.S. I don't think we're very I guess our reasoning, our ability to reason, everyday reasoning, like driving a car, of course. But when it comes to breaking complex things down, we are useless. It's very insulting for me to say that. I come from a passionate place when I say it. I just get so frustrated that people can be so easily persuaded to see things this way or that way. It's incredible. And all you have to do, by the way, is just go to most other countries. Let's just use Russia since that's the popular one on topic. Russia propaganda, blah 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 blah, but no one considers that here. It's frustrating.
Let's take another question. Let's not do any of the 9/11 stuff.
Yeah, that's what I suggest to everyone. If you're asking questions and you see a question you like, please plus
+1. Yeah.
So we know that we should ask that first. Go ahead.
So which other one would you like to take next?
Oh, you can pick one. I think there's just so many now.
Bob Swift has a real short one. He says perhaps start a topic on TruthScore, and I'm not quite sure what he means by that. Like show.
I don't know what he means. Maybe
show something on the screen.
I don't know. Bob, please rephrase your question. Be more clear. Now let's go to the next one. We don't have a lot of time, right?
All right. You want to take Duncan Pugh's question?
Yeah.
Here it is. Which topic or issue would you consider to be the most urgent or important right now? The basic question that TruthScore wants to answer. Are we talking language games and language games of language games or something different? So two totally different questions there. And I'll do a little bit of unpacking about the language games thing because he's referring to Wittgenstein there. So just deal with the first part
Cool.
first.
I don't really, I don't know what's most urgent. We have so many different things. Like, I'll tell you this. Look, we're all passionate about different things. So what I find most urgent for me, which is really what I find urgent right now, it wasn't what was urgent, a year ago. So it changes from moment to moment. It's almost like the news. You watch the news, oh my God, it's Ebola, and it's important now. So I think it depends. Whatever you're passionate about, Duncan, whatever you think is the most important thing to be out there and that you're passionate about, you go out there and you put it up, because people like you who are passionate about it will appreciate it, and they'll contribute, and people who could be enlightened in that regard could too. It's like, it's the perfect place. It's very, I guess it's a very personal question. So I think 9/11 is a good one. If I was going to give an answer, I think the growing police state, statism in general, I think, is a really great topic. If you're familiar with statism, so yeah, I think actually if I was going to pick one, I'll go on the record. I think statism would be my biggest topic.
Yeah, there you're dealing with like one of the fundamental questions of political philosophy. It's one of those sort of you decide this, and a lot of other things follow after that. But it's how could there be one single, the way the TruthScore is designed? How could there be one single most important topic?
Oh, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, there are so many different concerns that we have.
Yeah, no. One most important, yeah, it's whatever you want to make of it. I'm sure there will be trending topics. I'm sure there will be topics that will, a lot of people will get to see because it will be on top because it's just so popular and hot.
Yeah.
But that'll be for the day or for the hour.
So let's look at the second part of his question, and I'll do a little unpacking here because I'm assuming he's referring to Wittgenstein when he brings up language games. So the idea behind a language game is that you have a community of people, and instead of Wittgenstein rejected the notion of sort of a logical definition structure for things, and he said the way that you find out the way that people use language is you actually go in and you observe what they're doing with it. And so he made up some kind of kooky games himself in some of his books, but you could understand what people are doing in different areas where they're using language in very different ways as being engaged in separate language games. And so he says, are we talking language games? Is this going to be something like Wittgensteinian language games? And then he's trying to take it to a second level, and language games of language games or something different.
Let me ask you a question. I'm not sure if you're done. I think I'm understanding. Does he mean, will this just turn into a big circle of talking, like without definition? Is that what he's suggesting?
That, and then there's the worry about, are you going to have communities where they're just so radically different from each other in the way that they're understanding the topics that are being discussed that they can't have any common ground?
Yes, that's true. I found that a few years ago through some conversation that truth is personal, and so there will be cultures who it doesn't matter if they join a topic that's happening, let's say, in Alabama, like that group that hates homosexuals or whatnot. Some groups in let's say Sweden or a fairly secular open society, they don't even have the same standards of thinking, right? They're fundamentals that will naturally drive people apart. There will be people on TruthScore that you will probably not talk to as much on certain topics, just because they have fundamental beliefs that are incompatible with yours. Atheists and
here's how that's a little different than what he's talking about. From within the perspective of a Wittgensteinian language game, you can't even recognize why that other person is talking so weird. There's just an incommensurability there.
Oh,
with TruthScore, you can actually see why you disagree with somebody.
Yeah, but are you talking about like references, like almost a different language where you don't know what the person's referring to when they're speaking?
That's sort of along the lines of what the worry is there when people talk about incommensurability, and I think that you can never like legislate that everyone shall use the word in this way. I mean, unless you're the Académie Française, and even the French people don't follow their guidance when it comes to that.
But I can answer that a little better then, I think.
Yeah.
People agreeing on what they're talking about is an important part of TruthScore. So, defining things. Just like a debate. When you start a debate, they come up with the definitions. If you don't agree on the definition of a certain concept, then then it's going to be tough for you to debate it. So
Yeah.
we do. I think as a society, as a group, socially, we do have to agree on certain things like that, like the meaning of words. So I think we'll gravitate towards certain authorities, like a certain dictionary, and just there'll be some word parsing that
Yeah.
happens for sure. Lots of word parsing actually. Some people are going to get really nitty gritty with words. So it's going to be good. I'm not sure if I answered that question, so I apologize.
No, that's quite all right. Let's take Bob's sort of reworking.
It's a good question.
What is the most important thing I can get out of TruthScore? That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a great question, Bob. One, it'll give you an opportunity to actually talk with people you don't agree with, and actually, basically, new points of views. Number one, you're going to get a different set of points of views, which I think is more and more rare these days. And you're going to get, like Wikipedia, where you get hopefully you get the academia and you get. Excuse me, let me think for a moment. What do you get out of TruthScore? It's a great question.
Well, you get the opportunity to chart out what it is that you actually believe. Socrates said,
what do you get out of it?
Isn't worth living, and part of examining your life is actually examining not just what it is that you believe, but what grounds do you have for believing it.
I can answer that.
For crazy reasons, or are they reasons that could actually be upvoted by other reasonable people? That's important, I think.
It is. I think. Look, we now with news. If you're a Republican, not all Republicans. I'm going to generalize here. Please excuse me. If you're a Republican, generally speaking, you watch Fox News, and so and more importantly, you really look at Fox News as an example, right? You look at Fox News as your authority, a group who has your views and who you believe are looking out for you, for example, right? I want TruthScore to ultimately become its own authority on what's considered true or not true. But instead of it being determined by an organization like Fox, which is a certain number of people with certain interests, TruthScore is going to be represented by however many people contribute. So it's really like the voice of the world multiplied times reasoning and logic and evidence, and then multiply that times some technology, right? The internet. That's how I see it. So what you're going to get out of it is, if you're having that water cooler conversation, or you're at the Christmas table or Thanksgiving table, and you're having a conversation with someone, pull out your phone, type it in, find it on TruthScore, and start to list off the 3 issues that you already know are the issues, because assuming it's a topic that a lot of people are familiar with, the person you're talking to is, and examine it, open it up, discover something new for yourself or for the person you're arguing with.
That would be really interesting to do.
For sure.
I think this could be really valuable for, there's websites out there for students who are stuck in a debate class or a critical thinking class, pro, con, and, a lot of them aren't particularly good or interesting. This could actually, this is real, this isn't just, people putting the stuff up there, because they've been paid to do it. This would be people contributing because they actually care about these topics.
Open internet, for sure. Yeah, so I think that's the main appeal there, is to go to a source. So like Snoops, if I'm having a conversation with someone and it's on Snoops, most people I know will read it, will digest it and be like, oh, okay, whatever. they'll do that because Snoops tends to be, at least in my opinion, for the little few times I've been there, it seems like a good source, a reputable source. Now, Snoops is a small organization. They have a limited number of people who can contribute to the research. TruthScore, it's everybody. So we're no longer limited to what topics are being discussed. It's whatever you want to discuss. And if you want to discuss something that not a lot of people care about or not a lot of people can agree on, that's how it is. And some things may be disagreed for 30 years. There may be a disagreement that happens for 30 years because of the available information and the way the culture operates. And then there might be a shift in the culture, where that same topic that's literally 30 years old, assuming the website would, it would shift and change, and society would change. People who believe those things died. Like nowadays with homosexuality in the U.S., it's just harder and harder to find people who care. I saw, a bunch of 17, 18-year-olds hanging out at the gas station, and one kid mentioned, they're like, who cares? There's just no you know,
there's not as much traction.
it's not available it's not available in their hatred. It's not even there. It's just empty. So until the people who hate die, and I don't mean that they should die now. I'm saying until we evolve and do away with the older traditional views, this is how it's going to be.
Let's take this one by Josh Billings.
Yeah, post it up.
A humorist once remarked, as scarce as truth is, the supply has always been in excess of the demand. There may have been a serious point here. The market for truth may be less than you anticipate. Any comments? It's a good question.
Let me just read it now again. Truth supply has always been excess of the demand.
Maybe people aren't so interested in truth.
That's possible. I might be building something that people just don't care about. They just want to hear what's on TV and, you know, turn on their toasters that our phones can make food for us now practically. They're so advanced that maybe people don't care, and it's true. But you know what? I think people are scared of the truth because once you discover something true that there's ramifications to truth. Like 9/11 is a great example. You know, if things are a little fishier than the official story, it means things that most people are just not willing to deal with, and maybe I can, you know, empower people who are willing to deal with it to have a voice. So yeah, that's possible. This is a big experiment. At least for me, it's big.
That's it. It's an experiment. This is something pragmatic. You know, you don't know when you're designing some sort of new platform or writing a book or developing, you know, a technique for something, whether it's going to get any traction. There's a whole history of inventions that, you know, or you know, ideas that were brought out before their time came and they just didn't stick, and then later on when things were ready. But it seems to me that this is a time where where this would get some traction, where
I think so. Look, people don't want to be wrong. So we naturally have this drive to be right? It's an evolutionary feeling. So I think TruthScore's challenge will be to harness this right-wrong world, harness it in such a way that actually becomes productive. Because right now it's not productive at all. It just produces, you know, these 50-50, the way our presidential elections here in the United States, the two-party system and all, you know, the margin, they nudge the margin right in the middle, and there's no unity. If half the country's against you, right, against the other half, there's no unity, man. I want to bring unity to what's real, what's true, what's verifiable.
Yeah, and you know, really the only way to produce some sort of unity that isn't just coercive, and this goes all the way back to, you know, again, to Socrates and Plato. Mm-hmm. The only way to have some sort of unity that isn't coercive is through rational persuasion.
Yep.
And so if we don't create spaces, this is one of the reasons why I got behind this project when Leandro approached me about, you know, helping out as a expert on critical thinking. We don't have enough spaces for this sort of thing. We do have MSNBC and Fox News sucking up tons and tons, not only of cable, but of, you know, bandwidth, with people posting their, you know, just reposting the stuff on Facebook and people engaging in that. We don't have a lot of forums like this that don't spin off into, you know, one thing or another. So this is a great idea. You know, maybe there'll be more truth scores. Maybe there'll be other things like this too.
I'll say this. People don't want to be duped, really. You know, if they've been duped for a long time, then they don't want to change their mind. I think one of the visions I've had for TruthScore is in the future, when it gains traction and it can't be ignored by the media, for example, magazines, for example, before they publish their article, they're journalists, and they might have a small team of TruthScore people, which goes to the Culinary Institute of America question a little segue there. They may have to, you know, let's say that their article has 10 real serious points that they want to publish as true. They may have to, you know, delay the article for a few days so that they can make and support the points of the article. So when the article comes out, there's a little number next to like the 10 main points, which points to a TruthScore link where you can actually see, look, This is happening.
You know, it's sort of like, what was that measure of influence thing that came out several years ago?
Clout.
What was it?
Clout.
Yeah, and it wasn't very good. It was mostly your Twitter, how many Twitter followers you had.
Yeah, it's really based on followers, but people get hired based on clout scores. Funny enough.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was but there were some scandals with it too. It turned out you could game the system in certain ways. And,
everyone. Yeah, like the spammers.
yeah, this would be sort of like clout, only based on something that's a bit more substantive. You know, clout was just based on how much do you generate in these areas? You know,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
um, this is based on sort of a multi-level thing. You know, that's what
And logic and reason. Yeah.
So let's actually take the Culinary Institute of America, CETL. That's the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning at the Culinary Institute of America. Will TruthScore participants gain authority or subject matter expert credentials based on participation or activity? Not like the mayor of something on Foursquare or Yelp elites, but status connected nonetheless.
The answer is yes. If I think as you make judgments, and as the community is aligned with you, right? And you're making reasonable, the more judgments you make, because I want to just segue for a second and say that on TruthScore, you're going to judge whether you accept a certain piece of evidence. That's one judgment. You're going to judge whether you think this logic is constructed well. You're going to make these judgment calls, and a lot of them
are relevance too.
Relevance for sure, right? The test of reality. How relevant is it to the topic? How does it influence the topic? So as a topic becomes more mature with numbers of people, and it starts to what I call mature means a certain direction is revealed in its majority of people. You know, if you're one of the early adopters of it, especially if you're the creator of it and you're a large contributor to it, yeah, you gain a lot of points for that, for not only contribution points, but how rational you are, how willing are you to change your mind. Those are going to be tracked throughout TruthScore. So there may be people who put in 40-hour weeks on TruthScore, doing what they do, and they're going to amass a huge amount of energy for what they've contributed. And yeah, they could even abuse their power in that way.
Here's a question that's not in there, but related to that. Mm-hmm. So sooner or later, as it grows, you're going to need, like when you run into spammers or people who are just trolling and engaging in really uncivil discussion, or people who are just trying to game the system. You're going to need curators, I guess you could call them, right?
Yes.
So are those going to be the people who have high scores, or
I'm not exactly sure. Meaning, I don't know exactly what threshold we're going to give people, more or less control. Our goal is to have it be as balanced as we can, and there are so many different methods out there. I know. I forgot the name of the website all of a sudden. But there are lots of websites out there that use karma, and there's so many different technologies to pick from and concepts to pick from when trying to control and help that. Ultimately, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs. You put one little flag is inappropriate, and why with a few options, and the community will pretty much resolve itself. It won't be completely void of bad things. But nowadays that isn't so much of a problem if you think about it. It exists, but email spam is worse, and even that's getting better.
Yeah. I even get cell phone spam.
Text messages like that.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I get them very rarely, but they come through. They squeeze them through. It's incredible. Very rare, but still, they get through. Yeah. Let's keep I want to get to as many questions as possible. I'm going to try to be more intentional.
Let's take this one by Brian Byrne. Mm-hmm. I'm interested to know, following from my previous question, what is the difference between the TruthScore and FactCheck model sites? Okay, one big difference is FactCheck is one organization. So, there's, let's say, 30 people who are dedicated to putting up content. TruthScore is it's anyone, it's infinite. And so, FactCheck, if they're going to put something and the administration doesn't want it, whether it's here or Russia or some other country, it might not go up. TruthScore won't be like that. You want to talk about 9/11? You want to talk about Ebola? You want to talk about cancer cures? Go for it. I'm using those topics because they're controversial. They're the ones that are going to be up there. That actually, I didn't think about this, but TruthScore is something that is existing on some servers, right? So, um, how are you going to make sure that it can't be taken down in
Well, I
some
mean, we're always susceptible to hacks, but the Pirate Bay, which is I don't know if you're familiar with the Pirate Bay. It's
little?
basically it's the granddaddy of uh, BitTorrents, which is a technology that allows you to download and share files in a way that's more difficult to track. It's like the it doesn't matter. Sorry, old reference to that music site, Napster. It's Napster.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Um, so they, I mean, the founders are in jail, unfortunately, because they what do they do? Their website allows people to download web movies, and movies, Hollywood money, right? That's all connected. So, but their website has been up through and through. So, you know, the internet itself wants to be wants to, like, there's providers out there. There's people out there who are willing to go to countries and have servers in places that you would never imagine. And it may lead to that. TruthScore may be a WikiLeaks slash the Pirate Bay, in the sense that it has people talking about things that the government doesn't want us to talk about. But you know what? That's an old battle, and we're going to keep fighting it. You know, we're going to keep reading our books, and we're going to keep learning as a society, regardless of what.
Let's take this one 9/11 related one in part because I actually have something I want to say about it, but you might have something to say as well. So this is from Duncan Pugh. I have to comment on the 9/11 question, say it's a waste of time to investigate conspiracies and much more fruitful to look at how it's been used to instill fear in us since, just saying.
Oh, no, you make a good point. So, I think what you're saying, Duncan, is that there's multiple topics in that world, right? One of them being what actually happened, which is important to whatever extent. But more importantly is how did they use what happened against us, or for whatever agenda, I should say, that might be there, right? I agree. That's the thing. That's the best part. You know, so let's say you have 6 golden topics that you can come up that touch upon all those things. They're available, and if you don't word them the way that you know, it's gonna, someone out there's gonna come up with it. And so whatever you care about, whatever you think is important to be discovered, you now have a platform for people to discover it together.
So, you know, that actually, before I say what I'm going to say as response to this, that actually brings up a good question. If you have 2 topics that are really similar to each other, is there a way in TruthScore to merge those topics together?
That doesn't exist right now, but that's definitely something that will have to exist. Ultimately, people will want to maybe revise their topic. Because, you know, you could word something in such a way that just makes it inconvenient to talk about because you use the wrong word or the wrong something when it comes to.
If you use planted language, that's sort of like
correct. Yeah. Right. You could start a topic off just with assumptions that don't work. So that's to come, of course, but ways of revising topics in that way and also merging them, which you know, they never really. Yeah. They actually. Yeah. There's a process for it. There's been a conversation about that, multiple conversations about merging them. So for sure, necessary.
So to go to that question, I would say what you got there is a false dilemma. We don't have to pick between investigating conspiracies and looking at how conspiracies are used, because it's not as for one individual person. Of course, you only have 24 hours in a day, and you got to pick what you're gonna study. I don't actually spend a lot of time on conspiracy theories, period, myself, because I got other stuff to do. But if you were interested in that sort of thing, there's no reason why person A over here can't, you know, be devoting themselves full time to looking into whether there's a conspiracy, and person B over here be looking at the effects or how it's being used. Those don't preclude each other. And with a platform like TruthScore, you can have, because you've got, it's essentially crowdsourcing, you can have people looking into all aspects of a particular topic. For me, I would actually, you know, personally, I think that police militarization and, you know, the development of these very predatory local governments that are using that is a much bigger worry for me than 9/11. I'm not that big on 9/11, but and with that one, you could also break that down into all sorts of topics, and so it's I don't think, unless you want to sort of like bracket it and say, for a given person, it's more effective for them to focus on this than
Personal.
this. But if you've got a platform like TruthScore, you can divide up the labor, the intellectual labor, you know?
Very well said. Divide up the labor is great. You know, you'll have a group of people trying to prove the things about how it actually happened, and another people trying to talk about how conspiracies affect us in our media. They can all be converging. You know, they're going to be using, one group could be using the proofs of topics from other groups together, side of each other.
And we, you know, we want to have people from as many different positions. So if some people think that, hey, 9/11 conspiracy theories, pure nonsense,
right?
You know, whatever is in that, you know, that book, I've got it around here somewhere. The 9/11 report, gospel truth. They can create their topic, or they can be in on other ones and say, I don't buy this. You know. That's exactly what you want to see happening. I know for me, as somebody who believes in the importance of rational debate, that's what I want to see happening. You know.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah, that's a lot of potential there. Great question, Duncan.
Let's take this other one by Brian Byrne. More of a comment than a question. This has much potential. It will certainly help to remove misunderstanding and manipulation from debate regarding public policy. It will build a standard, perhaps, or am I being too hopeful? So there's that question at the end.
Yeah. Well, I think it has the potential to unite people. So, and I'll give you an example. I live in a townhouse community of 98 homes, and we have an association. Right now, we really have elected officials, right? My neighbor is one of the officials, in a sense, right? We have them do the thinking for us. They do most of the work, if you will, not just the execution, I suppose. But the whole idea of representation, which is what we have in Congress and what we have with our neighbors here with our association, so the big version and the small version, I think TruthScore gives these groups an opportunity to organize in a whole new way, where everyone has a voice. The people who have the most rational things to say get heard the most, not because TruthScore is biased, but because people will naturally be drawn to the people who make the most rational, educated arguments. That's my presumption, at least. And so I think we can almost, the future potentially is to create a standard, like a new technology, just like email. Email is an idea that came to be. No one monopolizes on it. It's something that's used by many organizations. Bitcoin was created as an idea that's still very in development. But the idea of having a currency that can't be altered, that can't be debated by a government, is incredible. And actually, Bitcoin has many other features. So that's a sidebar there. So I think there could be a room for a way in which people can unite, and everyone has a voice. Imagine if public policy was decided, the local, like city policy. You have an account, it's vetted as you because you live there, you pay your taxes, you have an ID or whatever, and you make choices about your town, not because the mayor said it. The mayor just executes what the TruthScore community that lives in that town decide together, based on their votes on what's most rational.
Yeah, you know, I went and voted, of course, in the recent election because I don't buy the arguments that I should cast a principled non-vote because they don't count those.
Right.
But the process of going and voting, even in local stuff, is so demoralizing. You know, because like you said, so many things are already like planned out, decided ahead of time. There's no real debate as far as most of the things go. Sometimes you only have one candidate running. Do you check it or not? You know, at least here in New York. At least here in New York, we have a lot of parties, so you can throw your vote around different places. Although most of the parties will end up endorsing the same two candidates, as it turns out.
Yeah.
And so, you know, this has the potential. There's something about actually participating by getting to say something that is so much. There's so much more there than going in and checking stuff off.
Yeah, there's an engaging aspect of it. You know, a website that actually asks you, do you think this is going to make a difference in this topic? Do you think this is logical? Do you think this is rational? Do you think this is good evidence? I think computers can't make those choices, right? Artificial intelligence is in the works by lots of people. Computers can't make those choices just yet, but TruthScore basically connects those choices that humans can make and how they connect with each other. It records them and makes use of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, can this remove all misunderstanding and manipulation? Of course not.
No.
That's always going to be around.
Tool. It's a tool.
But it's like any other. It's like any other thing. It's a matter of sort of shaving off some of it and changing the culture a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this has a lot of potential to transform the culture that we're in, and it's on the format that we're going to be living on the rest of our life in this virtual, interconnected World Wide Web.
Yeah. To add to that is, in reading these debate books and concepts, propaganda is brought up in these debate books. They talk about propaganda because propaganda is very emotion-based. And TruthScore is not meant to be emotion-based at all. You can have your emotions, that's great, but that's not what's going to carry a conversation forward.
Yeah, and if you do, just use emotionally charged language, people can tag you on that. They can say, you're committing this fallacy over here of appeal to fear or appeal to outrage or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Swift asks, can we have a peek at what TruthScore looks like? And I don't think we can do that here.
Yeah, we're not set up to do that. So if you're interested in taking a peek, this is what I recommend. In about 2 weeks, I'm going to be contacting all the people who are requesting invites. So if you go to www.truthscore.com, you can, everyone knows that it's spelled, right? I don't have to spell it. So if you request an invite, you'll get to see it. So you'll do more than a peek. You'll get to see the prototype, and you'll get to contribute a little bit and play around and stumble and deal with the fact that it is a prototype, right? So you can't jump on the seats because they might break. But you can drive it around. Just be careful. And so that'll be available, so you can take a look then. And yeah, you know what? If there's a lot of demand on that, maybe I'll show some previews in a video upcoming, and I'll link it to this video as well. So
that sounds great. So just to reiterate, if you want an invite to TruthScore, you can go to the site, click on the at request an invite button. If you're watching this right now, or if you're watching this as we put it out in the canned version, contact Leandro and he'll let you in.
Absolutely, yeah. People who are participating here, I'll give preference to. People who watch this video afterwards, I give preference to. But after that, once we have so many people, it's too much to manage for the prototype. So first come, first serve.
All right, here's a couple other questions. Well, this is an interesting one. This is from Christoph O'Gorman. Could the TruthScore be used as an antidote for shock jock radio?
I don't know what shock jock radio is.
That's the kind of radio stuff where they are just sort of like throwing stuff out there to try to bring up ratings by talking about controversial issues.
Oh,
very controversial answers like.
Yeah, no, for sure. I actually think, I think it would be an antidote for that. But I don't want to say antidote because some people are still into that, right? Infotainment, or is that what it's called?
Yeah, exactly.
People are going to be into that, and so you're not going to pry those people away. But TruthScore will be this platform where the people who are also turned on or exclusively turned on to more cerebral matters, they'll have a place to go. They'll have a place to talk and explore. So I don't know if it's an antidote per se, because I'm assuming, just the little I know about culture, some people are just they don't really care about. Apathy is a big problem in our world. Going back to the topic of whether there's a market for it, there's quite a bit of apathy in the world. So yeah, I don't know. Apathy sucks.
There's a little chicken egg thing though to the apathy. I think that a lot of people are apathetic because they just don't have any other. There's no way for them to really do anything engaging that lasts for.
Agreed.
Long. And that's why people have conversations and they're like, man, that was a good conversation. How come I don't do this every day? And then they look around and they're like, well, who the hell am I going to do that with?
Right. Correct. Here you get to do that. I want to add something. I really imagine something in the future where TruthScore becomes this, and it may not be TruthScore itself, but the process, the idea of having the internet kind of come together about issues. I imagine a future world, whether it's, I kind of actually said it, I said it already with the cities, but I can imagine a Congress that actually makes decisions based on certain policies that are decided, just like, you call Congress, everyone calls and goes crazy, based on what people are putting. 78% of the population is is voting, and the rationale is right here. What are you going to do? You're going to say no? You know, the rationale is in black and white on the screen. So,
do you think there will be, let's say, that this becomes very successful? Do you think it'll inspire rival platforms that?
oh, of course, it's the market. I hope so. I hope so. I hope someone that spawns sister sites that do similar things. Maybe instead of a truth, there's another way to connect people in a meaningful way that's never been considered about hair or glasses or I don't know, sex, anything.
Well, yeah, you can get a lot of mileage out of sex as far as controversial topics. Hair, I don't know.
Oh,
It starts to get a little shallow, but unless hair becomes identified with something political, I guess, or.
I want just ways of connecting, like Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going to be used for so many other reasons. There's so many applications for it. It's beautiful, gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous.
So let's take this one by Dan Porto.
Porto. I just want to. This is just 1 second, man. I went to high school with Dan. And 10, 15 years, and he moved away. I haven't seen him in a long time, and I miss him. And so it's really great to see him listening and, of course, asking questions. So go ahead, Dan.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's nice.
So there's been a lot of controversy over the plausibility of global warming. Is this the sort of thing that TruthScore may shine a light on? And if so, can you give us a simulation of how TruthScore might deal with this topic? That's a good question.
Great question. There's a lot of back and forth about global warming. And I think TruthScore would greatly contribute. It would create some clarity. So there are some truths about global warming that I think, like CO2, which we all know about. Nobody denies the CO2, right, in the air. There's what's the other topic? Where they spray the sky with like an aluminum spray to reflect more light. It's called. I know someone's out there screaming at the screen saying what it is. but there's that, right? There's that controversy. And then there's this cooling because of the sun now. The sun goes through, I think, an 80-year or a 250-year cycle. There's a cycle that the sun goes through. So I think the answer is yes, Dan. I mean, the fact that you're asking this question, I want to make it clear. TruthScore is an open platform, so anything can be discussed, and as long as the topics can be shown to have relevant evidence behind them and supports behind them, and the tests of reality can be digested and consumed by the public, by the market out there, for sure. I think it's going to create clarity in so many different areas of our life. At least that's the hope I have. I hope it has an impact that we don't quite know yet.
I think that one way that with topics like this, huge, big, lots of things rolled into each other kind of topics, the fact that TruthScore allows us to develop, separate topics as sort of arenas where things are going to be discussed is really important, because in critical thinking, one of the things that we stress is it's important to make distinctions where distinctions need to be made. So people talk about global warming, right? And there's, man-made global warming. That's one question. Is there man-made global warming going on? Is there cyclical global warming? That's another question. Sometimes people blur these together into one big phrase. Same thing happens like with stem cells, right? Should we allow stem cell research? And, there's like 3 different questions involved there. Are we talking about adult stem cells, fetal stem cells,
right,
reported lines, private lines, so when we're able to say this should be allowed or this should not be allowed, and we have to specify, are we talking about, say, governments with the stem cells? We're talking about government support for research on fetal stem cells. Making that specification allows for a better discourse than just saying, stem cells, what do you think?
Right, no, stem cells, what do you think, doesn't work on TruthScore at all. But you know what? You go on TV news, and that's what they'll do.
Yeah.
Okay, topic of the day: stem cells.
See, and then it goes to that issue of time again. On TV news, you're dealing with a time format where everything's got to be very sequential. You have a couple talking heads. Let's get this position. Now we'll get the counter position. Each one gets their 30 seconds. And then you have the newscaster at the end saying, "Well, I don't know what to make of it."
Yeah, that's exactly what TruthScore tries to do.
Right? So this you can actually, this you can actually like peruse at your leisure and say, "Okay, here's the positions for, here's the positions against. Let's actually take a look at these."
Totally, totally. I mean, sometimes I wish I could just pause the record, the TV,
Yeah.
and like pull them out and into the room, and then grab researchers, like all magic, like I Dream of Jeannie kind of stuff. Bing, 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 and actually have a conversation about one of the things they said, one sentence they said. TruthScore gives
Yeah.
people the ability to do that. I think presidents and will say things, and then they'll be on TruthScore within 10 minutes, and there'll just be an avalanche of things showing this is just BS. you know, this is
Yeah.
this is what he said yesterday, or whatever. So, and the Baptist Church, I wish, Duncan, I wish you would have told me the name.
Oh,
You know,
I remember. It's the Westboro Baptist Church.
Westboro. I know that it was Borough, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
It's the name of a town, so I didn't. I don't. Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't remember that. I should remember that actually.
That's
they
all right.
they
So
they're
we
national.
are butting up to 7:30, and
Perfect.
I really appreciate you coming on for this, Leandro, for the full hour and a half and fielding all these questions. Um, it's been a very fun Dr. Sadler Philosophy Forum. I think this fits in really well with the whole World Philosophy Day theme, which was about dialogue.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for having me. I thought it was great. It went by so quickly.
yeah,
And I want to leave this open, right? This is just the first conversation that I'm having about this, and I hope I can have more, if not here, somewhere else.
so you'll come on again some other time.
I would love to. I would love to.
Okay, that sounds great. Let me put in one plug before we end. I actually have a new YouTube channel that I started up, I think, about 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago,
Yeah?
specifically on critical thinking, logic, and argumentation. Right now, I think there's about 10 or 11 videos in there because I'm releasing, one every day or every other day. All the ones I've got right now are on the fallacies. But if you've been to my normal YouTube channel that has about 550 videos now, you know that I'm going to keep churning this stuff out, and there'll be a lot of series on topics. I'll have things on specific things like what are the different fallacies or what's
Oh.
inductive reasoning or deductive reasoning, but I'll also be discussing things that are books that are very important for say logic, like Perlman's New Rhetoric. This is just chock full of different forms of arguments, and I'll be giving that the same sort of paragraph by paragraph treatment that I'm doing in the half-hour Hegel series.
So it's educational, right? You really do break it down. Anyone interested in those topics?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's another great thing with YouTube and that platform. If you're not into this sort of thing, well, you go somewhere else and you watch the cat videos, or people will say, why don't you do they'll get on a Hegel video and why aren't you doing a video about Kant? Well, go over there and look at the Kant videos then. Anybody can see whatever they want to.
Yeah, that's the best part. That's it. Let the passions speak for themselves.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll wrap this up. Again, thanks, Leandro, for coming on. It was a great conversation.
Great
And I'll
conversation.
let you have the last word.
Sign up. That's my last word. Request an invite, please. I need as many people as I can to make this happen. Everyone, contribute together. Thank you, guys.